everyone, and welcome to Nostalgia Trip, the show where we take a look at old, classic, beloved games and see if they still hold up today. I'm Lucy James, joined by
Tamoor Hussain.
In light of DMC5, which you got to play a couple weeks ago at Gamescom, we thought we would revisit the OG, the stylish AF, the other acronyms that I'm not going to go through. But we thought we'd revisit the original Devil May Cry from 2001. So before we dig into it, I think there's only really one thing left to say. Let's rock, baby.
Pew pew. Devil May Cry started life as Hideki Kamiya's idea for Resident Evil 4, but when the team realized that the action-heavy, style-obsessed experience didn't quite jive with Resident Evil survival horror roots, it was spun off into its own new game. When it launched in August of 2001, Devil May Cry was praised for breaking away from the Resi mold. It delivered faster-paced and involved combat, a world that felt dark and unsettling, and a striking, charismatic protagonist. While a great game in its own right, Devil May Cry is also known for birthing a new genre and establishing the foundations for some of the most beloved games of today. It's not an overstatement to say that, without Devil May Cry, franchises like God of War, Bayonetta, and the modern Ninja Gaiden series may not exist.
Let's rock, baby.
So my experience with DMC is that I've dipped in and out over the years. I've certainly played games that have been inspired by, like Bayonetta, God of War. I'm not the hardcore DMC fan. I'll dip in and out, but I can appreciate it, and I do enjoy it. But certainly compared to you, I am but a scrub.
Despite what the YouTube comments say, I am a Devil May Cry veteran.
I am
pretty good at the game. But yeah, I've been playing it from the very start. It's one of my strongest PS2 memories. It's a series that I'm incredibly fond of, and Dante as a character I really love.
You looked at him lovingly.
I looked at him lovingly because I've been through some times with this lad, and it's been good the entire time except for 2. But yeah, so I'm well versed in Devil May Cry.
So we thought we'd talk about the gameplay first, because I think you can pretty much split the gameplay, certainly of Devil May Cry 1, into there are core pillars of it. So there's the combat, hack and slash. There is the puzzle solving and exploration, and then there's kind of sort of RPG-ish elements. You're taking your red orbs and you're upgrading things. But also I would kind of put into that the way that the mission structure is and the way that you're ranked pretty much constantly as you're going through the game.
It's a light score attack style thing that's interwoven in it. And the thing that we were talking about just earlier was back when it first came out, and this is what I remember it for, it's what everyone loved it for, is it created a new genre, this extreme action or character action, or people have different takes on it. But one of the main praises it got was it's so different. Yeah. It's so different from Resident Evil, which is what it span off of. It feels fresh. It's fast, and you play it all these years later. And the entire time I was playing, I was like, man, this is a very weird Resident Evil. It felt more like a Resident Evil than it had ever been before.
Totally, and it's going back, and not even just through the puzzle solving exploration, which is very Resident Evil, you need a rusty key, you use the rusty, would you like to use the rusty key? You use the rusty key, that kind of thing. But it's the way that, as I was playing it, and you can tell that they are trying to get the combat to be as fluid and the motion to be as good as possible. But playing it now after you've had the years of previous, the latter DMCs and Bayonetta and stuff where the combat is just fluid and just beautifully seamless, this feels, I don't want to say clunky, but it just feels more difficult. Yeah. It feels angular.
Yeah, it's very, it feels, because of the kind of how what Devil May Cry is known for, and the kind of that stylish fluidity, you just assume that it has that. In your mind, before I remember playing, I play this game quite a lot, but every time I go back to it, it always feels more involved and fluid than it actually is. When I think about playing Devil May Cry 1, I think about playing something like a Bayonetta. You're doing last minute dodges to slow down time, you're chaining combos together. But that's the kind of stuff that never really showed up until Devil May Cry 3 proper.
Right.
2 had bits of it. Devil May Cry 1 it is the granddaddy of this genre, and every game in that genre that has come after it, and most action games of today are indebted to Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
But it's more a game of like early ideas than the things that, and that's why it's tricky to play, right? We go in there having played Bayonetta with a muscle memory, looking for like even something
I want to activate my witch time, man.
I want to do a roll, and in Devil May Cry and in Bayonetta, it's like one button, backflip, slows down time. In this, you need to lock on, press direction, and then press a button, and then you'll get a very like slow roll out of the way.
What's so bizarre as well is if you compare it, the control scheme, like right trigger in any other game would be something super useful to you. In the original Devil May Cry, it's taunt.
The game that, like, I got this from my cousin, like, he bought it for me, and, like, I loved it so much that I was ringing him every day to thank him for buying it for me. It was that, like, and the thing that sold it to me was this moment. Like, I saw a clip of Dante using his sword to launch an enemy into the air and then just firing guns at them and keeping them in the air. And that was it. Like, I was like, holy crap. And even today, maybe it's more nostalgia being stoked by it, I find that still really cool, just knocking someone into the air and going bang, 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 and just like they lean into that over the, and that's what, like, not only does this game establish the framework for like how character action games play, but also the style. Like Bayonetta owes a lot to Devil May Cry. Yeah, exactly. Like, and that the flair and the kind of like bravado that Bayonetta has, the confidence, it's very much like Dante's. Perhaps a little cornier in this version of Dante and Devil May Cry, but it is that same kind of personality, and it's Kamiya who brought both of those, brought those characters to life. So it's no surprise that that's happening. But yeah, it's such an influential game in terms of gameplay, combat. The puzzles are a bit weird, and like the pacing of it is in 2018 is really weird.
It's like very strange.
Yeah, it feels like you can see more than ever how they've retrofitted a Resident Evil game to be an action game. Things like the pacing, breaking up missions, it seems a bit unnecessary. Like you have some missions which is like run from here to there and kill 2 enemies, and it's like, you did it, good work. And then other missions are like...
Well, they added that in super late, like in development, right?
Yeah.
And you can totally tell. Like, it's not just that, it's like a random mission where you're moving from the top of a tower to the bottom of the tower, but your health is slowly chipping away, and all you have to do is jump. Yeah,
jump down and then like put it in.
It's very strange, but like I find the mission structure gives it such a, and also coupled with the difficulty, you get a greater feeling of accomplishment. And with the ranking system as you're going through, it's a game where if you're doing stuff right, you are constantly rewarded for it. And even though I find it so difficult to play these days because my muscle memory is so tuned to modern hack and slash games, when I did actually succeed, I felt like so elated, like punching the air kind of thing.
You could say it's the Dark Souls of action games.
No! We touched upon this briefly already, that the plot of Devil May Cry is...
Bad.exe has been launched.
Well, it's there. There are some really cool like parts to it, I find. Like the fact that he has his own little devil hunting business at the beginning. He's got the skulls on the wall, and he's got this femme fatale-esque character and an evil brother. This is
stuff that is bad in 2019. When I first played this was the coolest shit I had ever seen.
So the thing is like when this game came out, The Matrix was...
Yeah.
Like, The Matrix came out like, what, 99? But also, if you look at the person who created this game, whose baby it is, that is...
Hideki Kamiya.
Hideki Kamiya. This is Hideki Kamiya!
Yeah.
And, like, he's responsible for, like, he worked on Resident Evil, Beautiful Joe, Okami, which is my favorite game of all time, Bayonetta, obviously.
So, like, there's two
That
pictures.
is a guy. You can just tell, like, as he's writing this game, as he's designing this game, he's like, this is what I think is cool.
Yeah. It's like, you can see the two pictures. Like, there's the picture of him with the wolf, and it's like there's this cute little dog, and there's him, and you can get a feel for how Okami could come out of that moment. Like he's got this out of that man. He understands like a connection with that wolf, and that's a big part of Okami. And then you look at the picture of him with his mother in that jacket with one hand on his thing, and you understand how that man can create Devil May Cry, and it's that level of cool is represented in the game. And as far as I'm concerned, that Kamiya looks amazing there. Like
he does. I wonder if he still has that jacket.
And the way you kind of look back on it and ironically think that's cool, like back in the day, is the same way that Devil May Cry feels. It feels like you understand this was cool back in the day, so I can't like hate it. But like playing it now, you are like, it's same with the story, same with the characters. You're like, this is a bit weird, isn't it? But I remember this being the coolest stuff, and it still feels that way.
That's the thing, though. It kind of does, like, despite its fantasy-esque setting, there are so many different things about it that does transport you back to the early noughties. Like the way some of the turns of phrase are incredible, and some of the ways that just the way the characters are dressed in like all leather.
And like Trish, for example, like the character archetypes. Dante specifically, like he was cool. This is what the type of writing that you could get away with back then, and it struggles to fly right now. Like all you had to do to make a character really popular was just make them look cool and say a couple of cool things. And like this game doesn't explore backstory in a super meaningful way. It's got hooks to it, like Mundus and him being the son of a legendary Sparta, and Nilo Angelo being his brother. But that's like baseline anime level storytelling, not even anime. Modern anime is considerably more complicated, and that flew back then. In this day and age, like if you were playing it for the first time, you'd laugh at this.
Masters, grant me one last surge of power, the power to finish him.
But like if you have that nostalgia, this is still cool because you know everything that happens in between all the other games. You know, like how it all comes together. So like from that perspective, I admit that it's bad, but it's also fantastic. Like, I love it.
I honestly, like, if it was, I couldn't imagine like if those characters and if everything was so po-faced that it just wouldn't work. You need camp. And like it's something that is in, like, I'm sorry to keep bringing Bayonetta into this, but I mean, you know, she owes so much to this. It's something that when he went to Bayonetta and did Bayonetta, he just ran with. And it's great. And like, yeah, sure, if you're not used to that kind of thing, it's not going to work out for you. But like, I thought it was hilarious.
Tonally, it's a lot of that campness and lightheartedness and really like easy breezy kind of like pacing and tone. It's important to the genre. Like, it's not just Bayonetta that does it. It's in Vanquish. It's in like elements of God of War. It's in Wonderful 101. It's in like a lot of the other DMC games as well. Most action games have that because it's such an intense experience if they're super demanding. That feels also really like po-faced and dreary. And like that's kind of there are games that have that, and they're games that are often forgotten in the genre. Stuff like Dante's Inferno. I think it's important to have that campiness, and it's why it's so important to the series, but it can overstep at times. See Devil May Cry 4.
We're not talking about that today, we're just talking about the original.
Let me out. Let me say my piece.
In the end, we're all satisfied. You are set free.
The impact of the original Devil May Cry, like, cannot be overstated.
I think the biggest impact it had was I wore leather trousers and a long jacket that was red.
Are you kidding me?
Can we cut that, please?
Are you serious?
Moving on, so it's an important game to gaming as a genre. It's like, it created a genre, right? Stop looking at me.
Oh my god, are there photos of this?
There is, you'll never find this.
Oh my god.
No one will ever find anything.
I'm going to message your brother. I am going to message your brother.
He's never going to find it either.
Well, after that revelation, continue.
It created a genre, and it's a genre that's been popular. And like what I love about it is it did this very Japanese thing for me. It took two things that I loved: action games, character-driven stuff, and fighting games, and started to put them together in a really meaningful way. So this was like the first step in bringing those two genres together. When I play a modern action game from Platinum, I feel like I'm playing a Street Fighter, a Tekken, the kind of button demands, that kind of stuff. And that as a genre is like huge for so many people. The idea of cool in video games, it's been a huge influence on, and cinematics and like, you know, taking movies and John Woo style set pieces and bringing them into video games. It was a big like moment in cinematic gaming, and there's modern games now that, like we said a bunch of times, are indebted to it. Like God of War exists. God of War as a franchise exists because of Devil May Cry.
Wasn't it because Kamiya
no, it was,
said?
yeah, 'cause I think it was a Japanese developer. I'm not sure
Yeah.
it was Kamiya, but it was like.
It sounds like something you would have said.
It sounds like something. He would definitely block Cory Barlog on Twitter if he was given the opportunity. But like the whole point is that we, you know, the
Yeah, they
team
said you
at-
could never. There will never be a good Western hack and
Yeah,
slash.
that's what a Japanese developer said. They said Westerners don't know how to do combat, which is why God of War happened, and which is living on today and has just had one of its best entries ever. So like the impact of Devil May Cry is clear, like and things like Dante as a character, for example, he's enduring in a way that very few other characters are. Like he is one of the big mascots of video games as a whole, not just PlayStation or Capcom or whatever. People love him. He's cool. He is Mario with a sword.
The thing about Devil May Cry is like playing it today, it's one of those games where like the intent is pouring out of every single part of that game. And sometimes it just feels like the game is working against you because of maybe the technology at the time or you know how quickly it was developed or something. You kind of have to separate your mind from where hack and slash games are now to where they were.
Yeah.
And when you're playing OG DMC now, like we've been playing Remastered recently, it's such an important moment in gaming that it's kind of nice just to take a step back to appreciate it then and to see how far we've come, not just in DMC, but like motion and fluidity and combat in games in general. And so like, that being said, does it hold up today? If you take a step back,
I think,
and if you're willing to, it's more like take a look at gaming history rather than just assume that the game is going to work the way that you want it to.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
It's like you have to appreciate it on its own terms. And in that regard, I think it totally does still hold up, and I think it's definitely a game that you still should experience and play now.
You're going to be one of two people if you're playing Devil May Cry now. Either you have the nostalgia and you know all the faults that it has and you're able to put it in the context and you can enjoy it as it is. However, if you're coming to it for the first time, you need to approach it knowing and keeping in mind that this is like a moment to educate or like take a trip back in time and see how this genre was born. Think of it in an educational value. You can like, it's like the way you watch Akira now. Like you watch Akira and there's so many parts of it that have been pulled by Hollywood as a whole and movie making that when you watch it, if you're just looking to critique it, you just say this is a thing that every other movie does. But if you remind yourself as this is the first time it happened, this is the first time animation looked this good, this is the first time a story was told on this level, or this is the first time animation techniques like these were used. And because of this, the industry flourished and learned from it. You have a better experience of watching Akira, and it's the same with Devil May Cry. If you treat it as like an educational moment and see this is the birth of a genre, you have a good time with it. It will still be weird at times.
The camera will fight against you.
The camera is rough.
Oh, but still worth playing in this 2018. So that was this episode of Nostalgia Trip. Let us know your fondest Devil May Cry memories. Are you still playing it today? Let us know in the comments below. Come find us on Twitter. I'm at Lucy James Games.
I'm at Tamoor H.
And we'll see you next time.